Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. We are very excited to be doing our third lot of Los Angeles filmmaker interviews.
Very, very excited indeed. I cannot wait.
I'm Claire.
I'm Charlie. Hello.
And we actually have the three J's with us today. We have Juan, James, and Jack joining us, who are all screening in the Los Angeles Liftoff Film Festival for one more week whilst the festival is live. And these have been a fantastic opportunity to learn more about our filmmakers, hear about their previous experiences, look to the future. So I think it's about time we said hello to them. The three J's. Hello, everybody.
Hi.
Hello.
How are you doing? Thank you so
Very
much. I think let's kick it off with, if you don't mind, introducing yourselves. Starting with Jack, could you tell us a little bit about yourself, a little bit about the roles you played in the film, the name of your film, and let's start with that.
Yeah, sure. So my name is Jack McLaughlin, and my film is called Shopping List, and I was the writer and director, and it's currently playing in Trendsetters Shorts 1.
Amazing, thank you. Juan.
Good morning, everyone, or good afternoon in England, London. I am Juan Escobedo, and I am the director and writer of Lydia Chlamydia, Gary Gonorrhea, and Marisol, playing in shorts 2 and 3. I think it's Trendsetters.
Yes.
Yeah.
And James,
And
over
hello.
to you.
Hello, my name is Jay Ryder Ward. I'm the writer-director of Persuasive, which you can find in Trendsetter Shorts 3.
Amazing. Do you also mind, don't worry if you don't have it specifically to hand, but could you just tell us like a sort of log line of your films, just for people who are watching?
Yeah, sure. So I'll go first, shall I? So my film Shopping List is about a lone hitman sitting in a car park waiting for his next target to arrive. And when his target does arrive, he's thrown into a really moral dilemma of which he's forced to act upon really very quickly. So it's a short kind of thriller with no dialogue, kind of told through music and images. Yeah.
Amazing, thank you.
Marisol is about a little girl from East LA who dreams of a quinceañera dress. And quinceañera dress is kind of like a debutante type of dress. And until she falls victim of domestic violence and child abuse. The other two, Lydia Chlamydia, is about a young couple out for a fun weekend until girl realizes that boy has been cheating on her with Lydia Chlamydia. Same storyline for Gary Gonorrhea.
Amazing, thank you. And James.
My film, Persuasive, it's about an African-American woman who loses her brother due to police violence. And she has to make a decision whether to have a seat at the table and try to make a change or sit on the sideline and just, let nothing happen.
Sure. Amazing. Well, thanks so much, guys. What we're going to do, we're going to switch over to audio only now. So we're going to go radio style as we start talking about some of the hurdles that you have overcome. So should we start with Jack?
Yeah, sure. So in particular with Shopping List, one of the things that we had to overcome was on the day of filming, we turned up to the car park, which was originally going to be a university car park, the university that I went to. Now, when we got there, bear in mind this is last September. So university, it was freshers in the UK, which we didn't realise at the time. So when we turned up at this car park, there was hundreds upon hundreds of students moving into their halls of residence with their parents. And it was that heart-dropping thing of, oh God, what are we going to do? So very quickly I said, I know a car park we can use. And we used a leisure centre car park, which my mother, she used to work in this leisure centre. So we used that car park instead. So that was one of the biggest things I had to overcome because it was the main set piece of the film.
Sure.
So if I could say anything, it's always have a plan B, particularly with a location. But in terms of my career, so far, one of the biggest things I've had to overcome is in terms of funding. In the UK, like funding's quite difficult to get sometimes, especially for short films and especially features. So what I basically learned really early on is that, the money's not going to come to me, and that you should just go and make your film anyway. It's like basically like, not sitting around waiting for someone to come and give you money or anyone to give you an excuse to go and make your film. You should just have that drive and the passion to go and do it. And that's what I've been doing so far anyway, and like still trying to overcome that. But yeah, so it's just that's the biggest thing I've had to overcome so far, is just regardless of money, as long as you've got the passion and you want to tell your story, just go and do it by any means necessary.
Yeah. No, I think that's a great thing to come to the realization of. And also just there's a very traditional way of obviously acquiring funds for a project. But I think now people are having to sort of think a bit more outside of the box, so to speak, and come up with new ways, whether that's crowdfunding, which I know we sort of were speaking about a bit before, Jack, and maybe you can speak about that a bit more. But just sort of different ways, as opposed to just expecting a studio to suddenly be able to say, yes, that's a great idea and we'll give you millions of pounds to make your film.
Yeah, that's the thing. I think it is one of them where that's why you hear filmmakers, they just go, oh, if only someone would give me the money, or do you know what I mean? And then I remember, the best piece of advice I got was from a director called Ben Wheatley, who I was fortunate enough to shadow, and he told me, like, look, when you're making films, even feature films, when you're writing them, write it so it's affordable, so you don't need tens of millions of dollars or pounds to make it. Write what you've got, and it goes back to the Robert Rodriguez School of Filmmaking. When he done El Mariachi, he had $7,000, if I'm not mistaken, and a turtle and a guitar, and then just went off, made a film, and now look at him. Do you know what I mean? It's just, I think if you got the passion and the drive, then just go for it.
And you can be smart about it as well. Like you touched on there, sort of like think about what you've got available to you. And one of the things that one of our co-founders says in one of the workshops on YouTube when he talks about this is you can start thinking smart at the very beginning before you've even written a script. You can really think to yourself, what locations do I have available to me? What scenarios, what actors, what crew, or maybe trying to keep it to one location, keep it as a two-hander. Like there are all sorts of ways that you can minimize a budget from the very beginning as well. So it's just sort of like being very aware of this from the beginning, I think.
Maybe just the one helicopter fight scene as opposed to
exactly
three.
Just have one car chase. You don't need four.
No.
No.
Yeah.
You mentioned there, Jack, about making the film regardless of getting the budget that you initially had hoped for. Do you have any advice for anybody in that situation? Let's say you had a figure in mind, but you're going to have to make the film on a little bit less than that. What would you say you learned from that experience, and what advice do you have to our listeners?
I think, as we mentioned before, I think crowdfunding is such a great way now to possibly get funding and an audience. And I think if you're making a short film, you can go down that crowdfunding route, but it all depends on what your story is, really. I think if it's quite ambitious and you think, okay, I need a bit more money, then maybe try that crowdfunding.
Yeah.
But if you don't get the money, still make that film, because I don't know why, but a lack of money makes you think more creatively. It's like, okay,
it's true.
Well, what can we use instead of a dolly? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or an action vehicle. Just put your cameraman in the booth and drive, and it'll look similar. But you know what I mean? It's just I just say that, mate. Just go for it, and as I said, if you got the passion and the drive, you'll do it. And I think being forced to think creatively is a great thing, honestly. So yeah.
Absolutely.
I hope that answered the question. Does that make sense?
No, it does.
Of course.
I just suddenly remembered, I wanted to say thank you to everyone who's joined us. Do fire away in the live chat if you've got any questions. Charlie will be keeping an eye on that. But hello to Neil and Teja. And yes, we will absolutely pose all of your questions. So fire away. But thank you, Jack. Let's move on to Juan with this same question. Is there anything that comes to mind with a particular project or just sort of career in general as something that you've had to move past?
It's always funding. Funding is the main issue. And then once you figure out your funding, it's the timing, finding the time to finish writing the projects and then executing the projects. Mm-hmm. I work. I have a full-time job, and which is filmmaking and photography with youth in East LA. So I have to put in my 8 to 5 hours, and then once you get the funding, it's like, okay, I need to find the time to be able to do the project. So it's finding that balance of timing and funding. What I've done is I tried crowdfunding for the projects. It worked. It worked for the projects for me, but it brought in a whole different element. And there was a lot of people reaching out, trying to get on board with the project. And you want to be nice to everybody that reaches out, everybody that wants to help out. And it's like, we don't know each other, so I really can't bring you onto the project because I don't know what your work ethic is and I don't know what your intentions are. So crowdfunding for me to attract a whole different type of element, I guess, if you will. Yeah. So what I've done is because I work for a nonprofit and we are a nonprofit with the filmmaking. I've tapped into grants, government grants and foundation grants. And as long as I follow their mission or what the purpose is for the grant, I've been able to use some of that funding. And there's a thing called environmental strategies. So anytime I apply for a grant, I make sure to include an environmental strategy. How is the community going to benefit from this film, this short film, whether it's 3 minutes or 15 minutes?
That's very cool.
Yeah, so it's you just got to be, like Jack said, you got to improvise, if you will.
Absolutely. So that kind of sounds like you have to fulfill certain requirements, much the same as with like a co-production, which
exactly
can be so beneficial to a project for different ways. So if you're doing a co-production and so you have to tick certain boxes like using a certain amount of local crew or cast, or as you said, giving out a certain message, that doesn't have
Correct.
to be a hindrance at all. It can be a great thing.
It's always worked
really
for me. I've always find a way to tweak that around.
Yeah.
You mentioned. Sorry,
go ahead, Charlie.
You mentioned about tapping into the government grants, etc. What advice would you give to people who are looking to educate themselves in that in that area? How do you suggest people acquiring the knowledge that they need to A, find the grants, and B, make themselves eligible for the grants?
So here in the United States, for most of the grants, you have to be a nonprofit to apply. And if you don't have a nonprofit, I don't know how it works in England, but here, if you don't have a nonprofit or you don't work for a nonprofit, you could ask to be physical sponsored by a nonprofit, which means that you reach out to the nonprofit and you say, I have this project, I want to apply for this government grant. Will you sponsor me, like a sponsor? And then after that, if they agree, you submit everything under that nonprofit. And what the nonprofit does is they allocate line items for your project once it gets funded, and they release the funds to you. So the nonprofit becomes like the production company, if you will. And as far as finding out grants, I've been doing this for 15 years. After college, my major was in theater arts with an emphasis on directing. Then I went to film school. And, you could have all the education, the college degrees or whatever, but at the end of the day, it means nothing if you don't have your foot in the door. So kind of like Jack, I started to do my own projects early on, but I had to work, and the work that I found was in the nonprofit world. So I have 15 years of experience, and I know where to go, what to tap into for grants. But the best suggestion I can give to filmmakers that want to tap into grants is to just Google. Google is like my best friend. If I can't find anything, I just go into Google and find it. And there's grants here in the United States. They have global grants. You can do films in Africa, and again, you have to check that box of what the requirement is. Sure. So yeah, it's just a matter of research, doing your research and tapping into those grants and figure out how to make that work for you.
Fantastic. Yeah, amazing. Good. Google is such an extraordinary resource.
Love Google.
We almost have the source of human knowledge in our pockets nowadays. It's remarkable.
Yeah. Which can make research seem daunting.
Yes.
But it's crucial, so yeah.
Just do it.
Just do it. Yeah. Put the time and research in. No, thank you so much for sharing that with us, Juan, and we'll come back to you in a sec. James.
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit? But should we start off with the question for James?
Let's do it. Yeah, we've got a question here from Tasia, saying, "What inspired you to write Persuasive?"
Oh wow. Actually, I was inspired to write. As you know, we're having a couple of I don't want to say issues, but we're having a few issues in America when it comes to police and minorities. So and it's weird for me because I'm like in the middle, because I have friends that are police officers, but I also have friends that are just civilians. So I get it from both sides, and I understood it. So what happened was, when I came up with Persuasive, I was trying to figure out, how can I make this viable for both sides to see that there's a problem that we could actually address together and attack it and correct it, and not just be one-sided. So that was like one of the, it wasn't really hard for me, because I knew I'm gonna get flack from both sides, because everybody's not always happy. One way, one person is going to feel you should have pushed it a little harder, sure, or one person was like, you treated the other side softer. But that was my inspiration, because I think it's a problem that can be solved. Yeah, we just need to communicate and speak with one another.
So when did you write Persuasive then? How recently, in terms of recent events in the US?
It was June of 2019 is when I wrote it.
Okay.
And I shot it in one day. I wrote it like on a Monday, sent it out to see if I could get some funding for it. Got the funding, and I was filming that weekend. Wow. And and it was a great project. I mean, the spirit there was, because I had officers on the set too, which was cool, with civilians. So it was a great vibe. Everybody jailed. It was a great project that we hope opened some dialogue, and hopefully we could change the world, to be honest, hopefully.
Amazing. Well, thank you for answering that question.
No problem.
Going back to sort of the question that the others answered, what problems, if any, did you sort of overcome? I mean, if it was such a rapid experience, did that lead to any last-minute chaos that needed to be overseen, or anything like that?
Because it sounds like you nailed it.
Actually, I have two, which is so funny. For this project, Persuasive, the funny thing is, you got to have permits in LA. So, and I had a police car, and I had it on the street, and the siren is going. So we kind of shot it guerrilla style. So those are things that you have to do sometimes when you don't have money as a filmmaker. You got to figure out how to make it work. On another project I did in 2018, I actually did a feature film. It was a horror thriller called Payment Received. Well, on the third day of a 10-day shoot, one of my lead actors got the flu, and we had to fly her back to LA. At the time, I was filming in Jackson, Mississippi. So for every day, so for the rest of the shoot, I was writing 12 pages, because I put another actor in a slot, and it changed the dynamics of the film. So every night I was writing 12 pages with shoot. And so I did that until we wrapped. The great thing about that film is not only did I come in on time and under budget, but that film also won Best Picture, Best Actor for Levi Bradley, and Best First Time Director for Feature Film for myself at the Edmonton Festival of Fear in Edmonton, Canada. So I'm so proud of that film.
Amazing.
You should be.
You just sound like a bit of a magician.
To me, you got it. Filmmaking is, you always going to have problems as a filmmaker. Your goal, especially as a director, is just to figure it out and just knock it out.
Totally.
You know, you have to do it.
How tempted were you to start issuing tickets? That's what I want to know. If I had a police car, I would have gone straight to my head.
You know what? It was so hard, man. It was so many people. I was like,
I'd have been stopping people left, right, and centre. I'd have been like, yep, see, £50, please. Great way to get funding. Also wildly illegal, so don't do it.
Exactly. No, I do not commend that for anybody. No.
Anyway.
Maybe another question from the chat room for Jay?
Yeah, so we've got was Persuasive based on a true story? From D. Perry there.
It's not, well, it's based on true events that has happened in America. So what I did was I just took elements of what we heard in the news and just incorporated inside the story. So that's basically where that came from. Yeah. So it's based on true stories that happen around America.
Sure. Amazing. Well, thank you all for sharing those. Let's go back to Jack now, and let's sort of project to the future. Where do you sort of hope your career will be going? If there's anything you're working on at the moment, and then sort of taking an even bigger step back, what do you sort of hope your career will look like in, I don't know, let's go 5 years?
Yeah, so we were discussing before, I'm currently in pre-production on a feature film called Kate and Jake, which is quite different from Shopping List. So Kate and Jake's a romantic drama about an ex-couple that meet up for the last time before one of them takes a exciting job opportunity in Australia. And when they meet up, the film goes back and forth in time, showing you what happens in their relationship and, you know, where they eventually end up, where they are in the present. That's going to be set and filmed in Liverpool as well. So we're actually crowdfunding for that on Indiegogo.
Okay.
And this weekend we're shooting a little test shoot for the crowdfunding video, just to show investors and potential backers what the film will look like. So hopefully in 5 years that film would have been done, released. Hopefully we could get distribution for it. And then in terms like my career in 5 years, I just love to keep making films and do it as a career and work on bigger things and get a lot more talented people involved. And yeah, basically just if I can make films as a career within the next 5 years or how long it takes, then that would be amazing.
Yeah. So do you mind sharing with us, like, what's the figure that you're going for? What's your Indiegogo target?
Yeah, the Indiegogo target, we're looking at £5,000 is what we're looking to get for it.
Yeah.
Because going back to what I was saying before about writing a script that's doable.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So a lot of the film is, because it's about a couple, and so a lot of it is essentially just people in rooms talking, but
yeah. We've
got two amazing actors, Michael Latham and Sarah Chadwick, who were just, when they're together, the dynamite. And that's another big thing I'd say, is making sure you cast the right actors, because especially for a film like this, which is a romance film, they need to have that chemistry. And there's a lot of really raw, powerful scenes in the film, so they needed to be able to do not only the romance but the drama as well, and they're just amazing. So yeah, so it's basically about 5K we're looking for.
Okay. Did you write this script?
Yeah, I wrote it. It about I think I started it nearly 2 years ago now. I wrote it when I was in university. Graduated last year, and so we're going into production now. It was essentially a case of one of them where I was thinking, oh, we'll get funding for it, and then, you know, it's hard because in the UK, it's like, you know, I'm 22, I'm from Liverpool, the film's set in Liverpool, it's mostly unknown actors, it's not really going to get industry kind of funding. So it was just a case of let's just go and make it with what we've got and build the script around what we have as well.
Good for you.
Yeah. Cheers.
Did you write the script with the actors in mind, or did you cast it post-script? And if so, what was your method for finding the actors?
Well, that's a good question.
Yeah, so we actually cast it after I wrote the script. So with Michael, who's playing Jake, I worked with him before on a short film, and we went to the same college, and it was one of them. He wanted to audition for it, and I hadn't seen him in anything for years, so he was auditioning for it, and I was like, okay, but you know, it's one of them where, you know, you've got to give other people a chance as well. I can't just pick him off a whim because I know him. He needs to audition like everyone else.
Yeah.
And we put out a casting call, and we were looking at people, and you know, we were really grateful for people auditioning, sending self-tapes, but we weren't really feeling it off people, you know. And then when I seen Michael's self-tape, he just came in and just blew me away. Like, he understood the character, and it was just like, he's the one. And then with Sarah, who's playing Kate, she auditioned as well and blew me away. And what's funny about Sarah, who's playing Kate, she lives down the road from my house. So it's crazy. I always think, that made me realize it's so crazy with casting that you think you have to go far and wide to find the most talented people. But sometimes they're literally, in Sarah's case, they're literally on your doorstep. You know, it's crazy. But no, yeah. I mean, there's so much great talent in Liverpool that's undiscovered. You know, and worldwide, really, so much great talent worldwide, and you know, hopefully we can shine a light on that with this film, you know?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, yeah.
Cool, thank you.
Cheers.
We've got an interesting question here from Be Excellent to Each Other that I guess I'll kind of open up to all of you. They say, now that Hollywood is in decline, will independent filmmakers fill the void?
Oh, that's a great question.
Thoughts? You mind being here for a couple of hours, guys?
I mean, well, I'll start then. I certainly hope so. I mean, this is something that we say at Lift Off all the time when we're at our meetings with the likes of Netflix, when we go to all of the film markets. We always say, this appetite is there. You know, we just need to be giving it a platform. But that being said, something that James, the co-founder of Lift Off, always says is we have to prove that appetite's there by people consuming each other's independent film, which is why he always says, go to film festivals, watch independent film. And when he says that, he means true independent film, you know, not some of these ones that are like, it's an indie, but it cost 10 million, you know, proper indie film. Because, how can we sort of be saying to these giants, you need to provide it, if actually we're not consuming it ourselves?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think production is a little bit limited right now in Hollywood. What I feel the worst for is theaters. People aren't going to the theaters and they're closed down. So there's a lot of business being lost. But I think production is very limited, but it's still happening.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And the way I think I can address that question is it's kind of hard when you're independent to compete with Hollywood because we don't have the marketing power. So it's very hard to get people to get in the seats. That's like our biggest problem. We could have the greatest film in the world, but if we cannot fill a theater, it does not matter. And so that's one thing I hope we could change. We need people like you to speak out, word of mouth, get the word out, you know, grassroots. If we could do that, then yes, independents can replace Hollywood. But without that, I'm sorry to say, but no.
Or I like what you said about, like, maybe not rather than replace, but the way you said, like, it's not even two entities that are competing. You know, they can both exist together as almost two completely separate markets.
Exactly.
I don't know. I think that's interesting as well. As you said, it's not really in competition as such.
Yeah. You know, and it's also interesting if people like Liftoff, if they have access to Netflix and they like a project, we would so appreciate it if you can say, watch this director's work.
Yeah.
Because that would make a big difference.
Yeah,
and I'm sure
absolutely.
you do.
It's what we're trying. It's what we're trying to do more and more recently with like our membership and stuff. So for the last year and a half now, we have been going to every major film market, having meetings and sort of saying, you know, these are people to put on your tracking documents and things like that. And more getting them to say to us, this is what we want, so that we can then turn around to our filmmakers and say, okay, rather than maybe making the film that you want to make for you, if you're serious about wanting to make a film like as a career, these are the boxes that they want ticked at the moment. And obviously that's always changing, but it's trying to stay in tune with the marketplace.
And you know,
projects.
There's something else that's really interesting, and I don't know what your opinion is on this. There's a film on Netflix right now. It's titled Carlos Almaraz Playing with Fire. It's screening here. It's in Netflix in our area. And that film was, we were to screen that film at our festival in March. And that film was brought to Netflix at one point, and they turned it down. And just recently, about a month ago, I think, it was brought to the attention of another Netflix executive, and they took it on. So it's just really interesting how that market works with the executives as well.
That actually leads us quite nicely onto another question that we have in the chat. I am aware that we haven't heard from Juan and James regarding the next 5 years, and I would love to go back to that. But we've got a couple of questions here that I also want to mention. First, Deborah is a big fan of yours, James. She says James has so much passion for his story in Persuasive, so on point. What's going on today in the US? And
Thank
then
you.
She asks what's next, but we will get to that in a second. I do just want to follow on from what Juan was saying. When Ollie Anderson asks, what are the benchmark metrics that attract distributors like Netflix to an indie film? So we start with you, Juan, and then maybe we'll hear about the next 5 years, and then we'll move back onto you, James.
So, you know, it's interesting because I know a couple of people that are in Netflix in a couple of shows, and I've talked to them, and they approached me to work on content for Netflix, and I said to them, well, what, you know, because I watched some of these shows, and you know, they're not my type of shows, but I asked, I said, you know, what makes a show popular? And he basically said, if you go on and just click on it, even if you don't watch it, that creates those matrix and those algorithms that lets Netflix know that there's a need for that show. So just clicking on it, basically, which is weird. I mean, I don't know how that works, but that's what was told to me.
Yeah, I think some of the things that we've sort of picked up over the last few years have been things like, and we actually did a workshop on this all in its own right, with regards to Ollie's question, having audience already there, so already proving an audience, which often lends itself to subset audiences, niches, genres. We were also speaking with another filmmaker before who said that if you were to sort of go through all of Netflix programs, especially sort of like their own original content, so to speak, that's often in like that top 10, you quickly see trends of what they want and what they're after. And I think that's so true, isn't it? When there was the boom in true crime podcasts, that then translated into true crime documentaries, and there was a phase of those. Like, you can sort of see certain trends, and I think one of the things we're often told, though, is just a proven audience, being very specific, knowing who your film is for, that kind of thing. It all helps when you then take that to a sales agent or a distributor, and you can say X, Y, and Z, these are the people who are going to watch it. Whether that's specific numbers on a database that you've got yourself because you've built them up from crowdfunding, or because you've built them up through investors, or all these different things. But yeah, I do encourage you to check out how to find the best audiences for your film. That was done by James, I believe. And we sort of go into more details regarding that. But yeah, great question. and it's one that we're constantly trying to find the answer to.
Yeah.
If we ever find like the absolute golden nugget, we'll let you know.
The password.
Yeah.
The secret code.
We'll put it on YouTube.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, so why don't we head on to the next 5 years for Juan and Juan James. Juan, if you'd like to start us off.
Yes. So for the immediate future, I've been working on a documentary called The Truth About the Truth, which deals with the Jehovah's Witness religion around the issues shunning, child abuse, and blood prohibition. And that we, again, the nonprofit thing and donations, we've received a large amount of donations to document the practices of Jehovah's Witness religion. So that's taking us around the world. We've been to Australia, London. So we got everything in the can. We just need to raise a little bit more funds to be able to finish the editing, do the post-production. And if you want to donate, you can log on to our website, telasofa.org. And you can make a donation there. So that's for the immediate future. And in the next 4 or 5 years, I do have funding to do a short titled Blaxican, which deals with African American and Mexican youth being aged out of the foster care system. He's turning 18 and he basically becomes homeless, but at the same time is dealing with generational trauma going back to the slaves in the U.S. And a lot of people don't know about transgenerational trauma or generational trauma, and it's the trauma that we carry from our ancestors. So it taps a little bit into that, but it deals with a foster youth being aged out of the system. And then another project that I'm in talks with somebody it's called Sparkling Nipples, which I can't talk too much about, but that's the working title. So those two projects. Say it again.
Nothing. Carry on.
Sparkling Nipples. Did I get their attention?
Yes, you did. Yes, you did.
So those two projects. I hope they work out. So we'll see. We'll see what happens.
Well, that all sounds very intriguing. The other projects sound super interesting as well. We look forward to hearing how they go.
Sounds like very, very poignant films.
Yeah.
Wonderful. James, it's your turn.
Yes. My goal is just basically for the next 5 years, just to become a consistently working writer director. That's like my main goal. I just want to work in this field. I just love it, to be honest. And for the immediate future, I have a World War II film called Unremembered that I'm actually working on with a group of people. So I'm very excited about that. And I'm preparing for a pitch. I have an animated series called Millard Street, which it's an adult animation. If you ever heard of a show called F is for Family, Brickleberry, it's like in that vein. It's just a fun little animated show. I got a couple other things in the work, but like I said before, I just want to work in this business as a writer director. I just want to work consistently. That's very really cool. About it.
Funny enough, we were watching F is for Family just like the other week. We were watching all these episodes because we saw Bill Burr on one of Joe Rogan's podcasts. Very cool.
Thank you.
So animation, is that a first? Will this be a first for you, or is this something you've had experience in before?
Oh, sorry, that was for me?
Yeah, the animation, is that something new for you, or is this something you've already got experience in?
Animation is weird because it's sort of first for me. Actually, that script was a live action. We wrote it 10 years ago. Okay. And then when COVID hit, we was like, wow, let's maybe get animated. So we reached out and we actually casted, did a table read and all of that. So it's a comedian named Dean Edwards that you should be hearing about soon. He's doing a show right now with Tiffany Haddish called They Ready on Netflix. So he's in it. And it's another actor called Ernest Thomas, who's from What's Happening. And Everybody Hates Chris. He's in it. And a couple other great stars that are in it that helped us out to get this off the ground. And I just started actually animation right before COVID hit in March. I got hired to write on an animated show. Then COVID hit and we had to shut down. So yeah, it's that's about it.
Wow, that's cool.
It sounds like you've got a lot of exciting upcoming projects, though.
I hope so. I want to work.
Yeah. Oh wow, we've got quite a few questions that we can try and have fantastic. A little look at.
Okay. Okay, so we had from Neil George. How do you keep the budget to a reasonable number and putting in enough interesting elements to keep the audience engaged? How do you find the balance between dialogue and action, interesting sequences? So as that's to the panel, I guess maybe we'll start with Jack again.
Yeah, I think with the budget, I'd say it's one of them, like, keep it low as you can when starting out. You don't want to get into debt when making films, and especially short films and stuff. But yeah, so with the budget, I just say keep it as low as possible, and yeah, like make it a doable film. And I think we're balancing the action and the dialogue, was it?
Yeah, so I think Neil was sort of saying, with regards to a low budget, how do you still keep the viewers engaged?
Okay. Honestly, like my personal opinion, I think that comes down to the actors that you get involved. If you get really, really good actors, then they will carry your film. Does that make sense? So yeah. if you get good actors, like really good actors, like I said, there's so many undiscovered talents out there that are just dying to get involved in a short film. And if you can get really great actors, they will do that for you. Yeah. Honestly.
What do you think, Charlie? How do you think you get like that balance?
Well, personally, I think that you're absolutely right, Jack. I think that quality acting can transform a film, but I actually think it comes down to the story an awful lot. I think that if you have a captivating and engaging story that, will in itself keep the audience engaged, then I don't think that you need much else. Obviously, the other components are all important to kind of uphold the standard of the story, but storytelling, no matter what format, is engaging if done well. If it's a short story in a book, if it is a series of images, even if it is just one image itself, one photograph, it's all about the story. And if you've got a good story and you have told it well, then I think that is enough in itself to captivate and engage an audience and make them into fans.
Yeah. Just to quickly come back to Ollie's follow-up there with regards to saying, do trailer views help? Do channel subscriptions help? Awards from festivals, things like that, in terms of metrics for taking to distributors. All of that helps, absolutely. All of that can be put into your pitch or your EPK, or even just things to talk about in meetings if you are able to sit down in front of any of these people. So absolutely, it all helps. Along with that, that's why laurels are obviously so great, getting those selections on your posters. Yeah, absolutely, all of it.
Perfect. We've got quite a few comments here. We've got a couple of nice ones from Tasia and Deborah. Tasia says, indie filmmakers can definitely fill the void. They're just as capable and resourceful. Great storytellers are in the indie film world. You are all the perfect examples, the 3 Js.
Oh, that's so nice from Tasia. Thank you.
And then Deborah says, all 3 of the gentlemen seem so passionate about their work. Good job, guys.
Amazing. Yeah, that's so nice.
Now we've got a question here from D. Perry. How easy will it be to stay on budget with COVID-19 in effect now? And is there a grant for that to offset the budget? Juan.
A grant to offset the budget shooting during COVID. That's the question, right?
Yes, I believe so.
Okay.
Yes.
Here, because of COVID, there's a lot of relief packages right now, and it's just a matter of applying for those relief packages. I get a lot of emails from our local politicians saying, "Oh, make sure you apply for this." There are small grants, and then there's larger grants depending on your nonprofit. So for us, we apply for a few, and we've gotten them to shoot under COVID, but or to keep working under COVID, if you will. There was a second part of that question, or did I cover that?
Staying on budget during COVID, which, I mean,
Okay.
yeah, of course, there's a lot of difficult decisions for filmmakers to make. Do you sort of like cease filming? Do you get all sorts of things?
Well, when we shot Lydia Chlamydia last month in Gary Gonorrhea, we had to get a lawyer involved, only because we didn't want to get sued, and we wanted to make sure we had the right language on the release forms. So we spent money, additional funds. We had to buy the little machines for the temperature. Yeah. We had to buy additional gloves and masks, and hire an additional person to make sure that people are keeping their distance, just to be on top of it. So yeah, but I mean, again, I was lucky that I had that budget, but it did go a little higher, and I did go over. So it broke the budget, I guess. Yeah. So it was hard.
Yeah. Well, let's finish with that final question from Tasia. I think everyone should answer that, because that's a really nice one.
Wonderful. Okay, so Tasia asks, to all, what is the best thing about being a filmmaker?
I think that is such a nice one to end on. So I think we should all answer that, starting with Jack. Favourite thing about being a filmmaker, Jack?
I think my favourite thing about being a filmmaker is just being able to create stories and, work with like-minded people and get your story out there. And, sometimes your story can move someone and they can relate to it, or they can be inspired by it. And that inspires you then to carry on and make more. And I think that's the best thing for me. And, it like any art form, it's just a pure joy to do. And yeah, I just love creating stories. That's what I love about filmmaking. Yeah. So yeah, brilliant question. Yeah.
Great. James, what about you? What's your favorite thing about being a filmmaker?
The favorite thing for me about being a filmmaker is having the power to evoke emotions. It's nothing like writing something on the page where you feel like somebody should cry, and then you watch the audience cry. It's one of the most powerful, it's like a drug. It's the most powerful feeling you can ever experience. Or like if you write something funny and you think it's funny to you again, and then you see somebody else react, and it's just to have people enjoy your work, being a filmmaker. And you got the power to sometimes change the world, because art is powerful. It's a very powerful tool that I think we should utilize more to help inflict change on the world.
Yeah, I totally agree. And Juan?
For me, it's having those wow moments. So for example, with Marisol, there's a scene in the cemetery where we do a reveal, and you have to watch the film to see what that reveal is. And when we shot it at the cemetery, I was like, oh, is this gonna work? But then with the music and with the timing, and it was a wow moment where I wanted to cry. And every time I see that, I'm like, oh, I want to cry. So having those wow moments when you're shooting, and then having that final product where you're like, where you're just proud of it. Being a filmmaker is really tough. Being an artist is really tough. I often say that I don't want to wish it on anybody, but it's something that it's in your DNA. You can't avoid it. It's something that you're meant to do. So for me, because it's such a struggle sometimes, and having those wow moments on your film, on your projects, it's very rewarding for me.
Amazing.
Wonderful.
Well, we just want to say thank you so much to all three of you, our three J's. Thank you so much.
And the two C's. Thank you.
I love hearing from our filmmakers. It's always so nice to dive deeper into your experiences. We learn so much from it, and we hope that everyone following. And there's been some great questions and comments in the chat, so thank you so much to everyone for joining us there too.
There's a lovely final thought here from D Perry in the comments. Dee says, great job, you guys. The beauty of doing what you love and sharing it with the world is what this life is all about.
Oh, that says it perfectly.
Who said that? Who said that?
Dee Perry.
Dee,
Perry,
thank
okay.
you so much for that.
Thank you, Dee. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Perfect.
Well, yeah, thank you so much, guys. And I hope you enjoy the rest of the week of the LA Festival.
Thank you both, Charlie.
Thank you,
and Claire.
Charlie
Thank
and Claire.
You.
Thank you, guys.
Charlie
The
and Claire.
two C's. The
Stay
two
in touch
C's.
with us. Bye.
Bye.
Okay, so that was the
Is it 3 J's?
our 3 J's.
3 J's.
That was amazing. Yeah, fantastic comments and questions there. Love that. So that's why we love doing these. It's great, isn't it?
So inspiring.
Yeah.
Absolutely inspiring.
So as we said, what's coming up? We have the final week of Los Angeles, so that'll be closing on Sunday. So for anyone participating in the festival, you've still got 1 week to watch those films. For anyone who hasn't decided their 2 favourites and voted yet, you've got 7 days left to do that. Very exciting. Join Natalie and myself on Friday for our final voting roundup. So that will be 2 p.m. UK time, I believe. We look forward to it.
Cannot wait.
Thank you so much, guys.